Welcome to the WriterDojo with your host, Steve Diamond.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
And Larry Correia.
What we've got here is a failure to communicate.
Today's episode, 1 month as a discovery writer.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the WriterDojo. Glad to have you all with us today. Now, Larry, it's a momentous period in time for you.
Yeah.
Because it has been 1 month since you started discovery writing.
Okay. So if you guys missed this previous episode, I am discovery writing a novel because I figure I host a writing podcast and I've always been the outline guy. And Steve has done some outlining, but he's normally a discovery guy.
Right.
So I am kind of chronicling what I've learned as I go, discovery writing this latest novel. So this is 1 month. We're actually 1 month and a couple weeks now, but we're, by the time this airs.
A month.
Yeah, so I had a month because it was election week and I didn't get anything done for a week other than screw around on the internet.
Yeah.
Picking fights with people. But, so I've been doing this for 1 month, discovery writing, and the book is Academy of Outcasts, or Outcast Academy. I'm not sure what the actual name is going to be finally. That's, that'll be up to the, that'll be up to the publisher basically on whatever market's better.
I think I like the sound of Outcast Academy a little bit better. But anyway, I don't know.
I know. Well, we'll see. But I'll talk to those guys. But okay, so I'm doing this book for Athon, and it's a progression fantasy. I've been doing it 1 month, and you guys keep in mind, a good month for me, normally, I shoot for 10,000 words a week.
So 40-ish thousand a month.
40K a month, let's just say.
We'll call it an average and say 45 because you got 5 week months and 4 week months.
Yeah.
45K.
I did 61.
Yeah.
So I did 61K.
And you don't write on weekends?
No, I don't. I write Monday through Friday, normal work hours.
Yep. So if you do that, I did the math on this. That's about 2,600 and change words a day.
Yeah. No, it actually worked out to, I had several 4,000, 5,000 days, and I had
Shorter days.
other days where I had like doctor's appointments and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So altogether,
Because you're old and you have to have doctor's appointments.
yeah.
We will talk about this.
When you coming up on 50 and there's like all those things you're supposed to do before you're 50.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Woo.
So I did all that in October too.
Speaking of existential horror.
Yeah. I did all that in October too.
Anyway.
Plus I started doing martial arts again. I've been doing jiu-jitsu, which as a almost 50-year-old man has also cut into my writing time because the next day as I'm sitting there with an ice pack on my arm in the incredible pain.
Yeah.
But legally there's very few opportunities for me to choke slam people, so I got to take them as they come.
Right.
Now, okay, so my report on discovery writing. Okay, it is a very different mental process. And I can already tell you what's going to happen when I get to the end of this book, because I'm going to write this book faster than I normally write a book. However, I bet she's going to take me longer to do an editing pass.
I bet it will too.
Yeah. So, because I'm so trained now as an outliner, so I'll outline in depth before I start. I will write a first draft that will take me 4 months.
3-4 months, yeah.
Okay. I'll get it done, but then my editing process is less than a month. Usually it's a few weeks because I've trained myself enough that my first draft is fairly close to what my vision is. On this, I'm just writing. So I'm going faster, but I'm getting to the points where I don't really know what's going on and other things. So I'm just like, here's a thing, and I'll throw a thing out there, but I haven't developed the thing. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm thinking is like, so far, my prediction, we'll see. And we'll do this again in a couple months when I'm done. But so far it seems faster to create, but I'm suspecting it's going to be slower to edit.
I suspect that it will be, that it won't be as slow to edit as you think it is. And that's not because of anything inherent within the process of discovery writing versus outlining. I think it's because your brain is trained to already edit out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, because I've done this my similar process 29 times.
Right.
And so it's a lot of experience doing that. So that's probably correct. That said, I could not imagine doing this in the old days where I would be typing this or handwriting this
Screw that.
as opposed to word processing.
Oh, screw that.
Because this is so easy. I'm like, I don't know what this is. I'm going to put a placeholder. I know what my placeholder is. I can fly back in time whenever I want.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and
you
clean
just
that
like
up.
highlight, add comment. Check on this later.
Yeah, and for me, my editing process is XX or XXX.
Right.
Because that does not normally turn up in words. So I can just go Control F.
No, you're not writing paranormal romance.
No, if I was writing paranormal romance, I actually might. One of these days, I'm going to screw myself and have like some alien name will be like Zizix or something.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'll have a double X in there, and then I'll like
damn
totally
it.
ruin my manuscript and never be able to fix all the things I got wrong. No, but it's been fun. I've been having a good time.
I've noticed this from, I mean, we get together pretty often and stuff, and I've noticed the enthusiasm that you've had as you've been writing it. Part of that is too, you've done it so fast that you haven't had time to get bogged down and get into that stage that I think all writers get to, where it's like, I'm done with this section of the book. I hate this section of the book.
Right.
And even though like the person who's reading it, they get to that part and they're like, oh, I mean, it was like a chapter. It was really fast. Why did that bother you? It's like, well, because it took me ages to write it and I hated it while I was writing it.
Yeah. So
It was hard.
Like a lot of times in my regular manuscripts, like I'll have like my outline and I know something has to happen, but I'm just not in the mood to write it. I will put a blank stub there with a note, XX, so-and-so needs to tell such and such that this happened and then this thing needs to blow up. And I'll put that there. And then if I don't feel like writing it, because normally I'll have like dozens of those when I first start because of the outline.
Sure.
I don't have those currently, but if I'm going through now and I come to a thing where I've only actually done this once so far, where I thought it might be really good to have a scene of this. And I put a thing, and then I went and I wrote the next scene, and I'm like, I don't think it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Delete.
Yeah, so I just go back and delete it. That said, one of the things I have struggled with a little bit on this is normally I would have done more in-depth world building, and I haven't. So this has a lot of world building in it, but I'm like, I've actually I made
like piecemeal on the fly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to find a way to do that like more organically. So I've actually decided this book I'm probably going to do what I did in Grim Noir, where with chapter bumps.
Oh, sure. Yeah. To world build outside of the context of the actual progression.
Stuff that the reader should know and the characters should know, but I don't want to stop the narrative flow
I get it.
to info dump. Mm-hmm. And also, when I first started writing this, I needed a character who comes from the backwoods, who goes to the big city, basically that kind of story.
Yeah.
Only it's
Hallmark.
like he goes from lava planet to the hive city of the core, right? Okay, but I'm going through this and I decided this guy needs to know more than his background. So I actually borrowed upon my own youth, and I was like, this kid had a set of encyclopedias. Because it was one of those, I needed somebody to have a knowledge base of things outside his little world, but not a perfect understanding, but he at least needed to know what a thing was and what it represented and what it meant. He didn't have to know exactly how it worked. So I introduced basically the concept of this world has like the Encyclopedia Britannica with its 38 volumes.
Well, and that works too because like okay, you watched Fallout, I watched Fallout. Mm-hmm. They have encyclopedic quote unquote knowledge of something that has happened. Doesn't mean it's true,
right?
And you can play with that.
I have actually. So what I did on this is I had because they're traveling on these barges over basically the elemental plane of fire.
Yeah, trailer park.
It's basically they live in it. It's mobile homes.
Yeah,
and they're trailer trash. So I'm writing trailer trash. The set of encyclopedia they bought that their cadre bought was 100 years ago, so that way they're out of date.
Yeah.
So they were written 100 years ago, right before he gets to like where all the action happens. So I can mess with stuff that way, and I also lost half of them.
Yeah.
Just like every other set of encyclopedias in the world.
Oh, yeah. You're missing volume like 318 and 54.
Yeah. And so there's gaps in the guy's knowledge because he just never heard of that thing.
Yeah.
And even though it might be a thing that's well known, and so it was a storytelling decision that I came up with. And plus, I like writing chapter bumps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just little short, like 1 or 2 paragraphs of,
Yeah.
of like knowledge dump. But if you write those in an entertaining way, they don't feel like info dumps to the reader.
No, they actually become kind of a storytelling character and unto themselves when they're written effectively.
Yeah, so when I did Grimoire, honestly I'll put the chapter bumps in Grimoire against any other chapter bumps anybody has ever done in any books ever, because I did fake historical quotes.
Yeah.
And from real people mostly, and I put or real items of history only twisted.
Yeah.
I did letters, I did reports, I did newspaper articles.
I was going to say you had some newspaper articles and stuff, some like BBC-ish sort of news reports.
Yeah, and so each one.
Yeah, I think when a chapter bump is done right, it almost kind of becomes a character unto itself when they're done effectively. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
because they add so much personality.
I haven't written them yet, but what I've done is I've started like making notes of I need to explain this. I need to explain this. And one of the things that's progression fantasy is I'm not going full lit RPG.
No. You don't need to add tables.
I didn't want to add tables or character sheets or stats or anything like that.
I just did a 250-page proposal for the government with tables and stuff.
Yeah.
At the end of it, I'm like, is this what lit RPG is like?
Probably prepare you really well. But what I am doing, however, is I'm progression fantasy, which is basically like lit RPG in the same kind of story, only without that granularity.
Without the tables, yeah.
So I am actually adding. Basically, it's straight up that there are levels to the wizards, right? Mm-hmm. And that makes sense because it's a ranking system.
Sure.
And you're just rated, and also so I have to have little bits like how does the magic system work?
Yeah.
And it's stuff that I don't want to bog down the narrative with.
Yeah. Yeah. When I'm doing, when I'm discovery writing and little world building things come up, typically what happens with me is you'll see my flow of narrative and then there'll be a comment bubble off to the side as I get to something like worldish. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, go back and add in a little bit of description on how psychic powers work in chapter X.
Yeah.
And you'll just see a smattering of these. And then that is what my first editing pass really truly is. It's going back and adding that foreshadowing or whatever in. And as I'm doing that, I'm also cleaning stuff up. And then from there, at that point, then it's the editorial at that point is just, okay, well, what does my editor think?
Right.
Are there places where they're confused or bored or whatever? And then I shore that up in a subsequent editing pass.
Now, one thing that is different process too is tonality. And when I say tonality, when I do an outline, I go from beginning to end, so it gives me a pretty good idea of what like the vibe of the whole story is.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? When you're discovery writing, it's more like you discover the tone,
yes,
the vibe as you go.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
No, 100%, man. I mean, I don't know if you remember this when I wrote the first half of my science fiction, my giant robot science fiction story mixed with alien. I wrote it in third person. With a very specific tone. And after about 2 chapters, I was hating it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I do not like this. So I went back. There was a little too much humor in it. I was writing it with more of like the sensibility of like residue and stuff. Cause that has kind of a snark in it and a little bit of sense of humor and stuff.
Yeah. It fits Jack's personality.
Right. And I went back and I changed it to first person and stripped some of that away. And had him be a bit more jaded and frustrated. And the tone changed it. The first person sense changed it. And from that point on, I mean, I wrote the first half of that in over a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And it was way better. So, I mean, yeah, you have to discover the tone as you're going along. That's interesting.
This one actually opened darker than I thought it was going to, but then got funnier. But the way it actually has worked out in my head is that people with like really rough backgrounds are funny as crap.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, and I've used this fiction before, and it's honestly it's my own background.
Sure.
So I grew up on a farm. I grew up really super poor. I grew up in rough circumstances, had a lot of family trouble, but me and my friends, we were just goofy. We just had a lot of fun with it. And like life sucked, and we knew life sucked, and we recognized that life sucked, and we were probably going to die miserable, poor milking cows,
From the cow.
Yeah, more than likely, we'll get run over by a tractor or something. And it was just whatever. We were down with this, and life sucked, and we were miserable, but it was fun. And so as I started doing this, I was like, you know what? Like these guys are like mining a magical element from the edge of the plane of fire, and everything wants to kill you, and all the wildlife is on fire.
So it's Australia.
Yeah, everything sucks, and though this particular group of people actually like name wise and stuff, all the like name and culture wise it worked out. They're all either Irish or Portuguese.
I mean,
I don't know why that worked out that way, like all the names and whatnot, but yeah, no. So I've been having fun with that character wise, but yeah. So definitely, if I outline the whole thing, I have a really good grasp of the story from beginning to end, and most of the midpoints, right? Most of the checkpoints as it goes. So I usually have the tonality nailed down before I start.
well, and it's not like you're writing something familiar,
Right.
right? Like when you do Lost Planet Homicide, you know going in immediately without even outlining anything. You know, oh, this is noir.
Because I'm writing a gritty cop show
Yes.
in space. It's gonna be a gritty cop show. And
Yeah,
gritty
yeah.
cop shows have a vibe. There's
Yes.
a vibe to gritty cop shows.
Right.
And so you got to check those boxes. This is a little bit different, a little more freeform. Got to figure out as I go. And so I was probably a good 20,000 words in before I kind of really nailed down like what it was. And so I'll probably wind up going back and edit the very beginning to match that a little better.
Now okay. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about beginnings as a discovery writer, because I have some comments on that too. We'll be right back.
Sarah is raised as the daughter of Iron Andy Calhoun, an Appalachian military hero and one of the electors who gets to choose the Emperor of the New World. She has a natural talent for hexing and one bad eye, and all she wants is to be left alone, especially by outsiders. Sarah's world gets turned on its head at the Nashville Tobacco Fair when a Yankee wizard priest tries to kidnap her. Sarah fights back with the aid of a mysterious monk named Thalanace, who was one of the not-quite-human firstborn, the mound builders of the Ohio. Thalanace reveals to Sarah that she's really the daughter of the murdered king of Cahokia and the former empress, Mad Hannah Penn. Now, on a desperate quest to claim this heritage, she is hunted by the Emperor's bodyguard of elite dragoons, as well as by darker things, shape-shifting mockers and undead Lazars, and behind them, the necromancer, Oliver Cromwell. If Sarah cannot reclaim her heritage, it may mean the end to her, to her family, and to the world where she is just beginning to find her place.
Witchy Eye by DJ Butler is available on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. Pick up your copy today.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Okay. So right before the break, you were talking about how you thought you were going to end up going back and kind of tweaking the beginning.
Yeah, you definitely got to smooth out the rough edges.
I think this is common. Every book that I've discovery written, I've rewritten the beginning. Every single one. Literally.
That makes sense, actually.
I mean, remember with Residue, you read the first draft and you read the beginning of Residue, and you're like, the book is good, but the beginning is off. It doesn't feel in place with the rest of the book. And that's because, you have that beginning in mind or wherever, and you just pick the point to start. You jettison off from there and you go. But by the time you get to the end of the book, it's almost like Ship of Theseus sort of thing. Like that book is not the same anymore by the time you get to the end, right? All the parts have been replaced. A lot of the stuff has been changed. The theme has been changed. The tone has been changed, whatever. So you end up having to go back and kind of rejigger the beginning a little bit.
Because there's a mental switch where you hit your stride.
Yeah. And you go, okay, this is what this book is.
You've been playing in it long enough that it's now clicked clearly with what it is. I would agree with that. That's definitely how it feels. Mm-hmm. I could see how that would be a common thing.
Oh, yeah.
Now, maybe if I had written in this universe before, it'd be different. you know?
Yes.
Because then you know them, right? And you just go. Like I could probably Discovery write a Monster Hunter novel tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a totally different
Because it's
thing.
15 years that I've known these people.
Yes.
You know, so that's right. One thing too is tonality was like when I started, and it was a little bit darker at the very beginning. Keep in mind, I had just finished back to back Graveyard of Demons and Heart of the Mountain.
Yeah.
Okay, so 250,000 words of deep, dark.
Well,
Like,
and it was the end too.
was the end.
So it was like everything is bad and horrible and death.
Lots of people died.
Demons everywhere.
Demons everywhere. Cities are being destroyed. Tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people are getting massacred.
Dogs and cats living together.
Dogs and cats living together. This man has
hysteria.
no. Yes, Your Honor, it's true. We watched Ghostbusters on Halloween, and William Peck, EPA. Okay, but so yeah, we are definitely looking at this thing where I've done this long enough that I could play in the world. So you hit your stride, you move along, and I was writing the deepest, darkest, densest, and it's some of the Black's deep, it's thick,
Yeah.
and it's my epic fantasy series. This is a progression fantasy series.
Very different.
So this is the difference between Lord of the Rings and your D&D campaign.
Yes.
So this one, I was like, okay, so I started out really dark. Like, no, okay, this has got to be funner. This has got to be lighter. This is more of an adventure story. Plus, progression fantasy tends to be one dude going from zero to hero.
Yeah. 0 to hero is literally the.
And so I was like, I need to
trope.
go to zero. I need to take it to zero, literally, because that's what I'm doing here.
You could have gone to -0.
You can't have -0 though. That's bad.
Weird.
So that's what I did. And so when I originally started it was a little deeper and darker, but because literally 2 days before I had been working on Heart of the Mountain finale
Right.
and like funeral scenes,
Yeah.
you know, after people's heroic deaths.
Yes.
The scene that Jason Cordova messaged me after he read the manuscript, he was like, "Oh man, I just started crying." And it was like, he's like, "They just ripped my heart out." And I was like, "You're welcome."
You're like, yeah.
Because I nailed the end of Heart of the Mountain. It's good. But also mentally for me as a writer, it's good to flip to something lighter, you know, more just adventure, you know. And plus I was writing Ashok Vidal, right? We talk about 0 to hero. Ashok Vidal, that story opens, he's like the ultimate killing machine, Judge Dredd of the world. Yes. And by the end, he's like, "I'll fight gods. Bring them on." Yeah, you, come here.
It's what you do.
This is Ashok. And no one upstages Ashok.
Yeah.
Right? And so this was entirely different. Had to go back to a character who he's just a kid.
Well,
right?
and there's a certain
He's
naivete.
not young adult.
Yeah,
but
there's a certain, lack of world knowledge and lack of, the naivete of being in that world.
Right.
And in that universe that this guy has that Ashok did not have.
No. So without the powers, so opening it's like so like what is the kind of thing that gets somebody who has no resources by in a challenging situation? I just gave him stubbornness.
Yeah.
Just stubbornness and the life experiences of basically having a really hard life.
A farm kid.
Basically,
The average farm kid.
yeah, except farming fire elementals, you know.
Right.
And so that's what I went with. And like by the time the actual story gets rolling, because the first few chapters are just like this guy's life, but it's like skipping ahead 3 years at a time until the story gets showed, but just enough to like establish where he's coming from, who he is,
and what the world is. Yeah.
but he doesn't have much. He's not really. He's got and really the big main story opens with him like faking his death and going on an adventure.
Yeah.
So, and I've been having fun with it, and I will embrace tropes, man. You know me.
Sure.
I will embrace the hell out of them. Oh, and I added Drek's Blood Trail.
Of course you did.
For many of you won't know who I'm talking about. This is a character that Steve knows because it was somebody I played in a role-playing game.
Yes.
And it's from a race that you've not seen before in a fantasy novel. So I contacted Pat Tracy, who made up the race, and I was like, "Yo, Pat, can I use Squallows in this world?" And Pat's like, "Hell yeah!" I was like, "I'll give you a thank you in the credits."
Yeah.
So it was just fun. But I'm doing elves and dwarves and gnomes and goblins and all your traditional things, some new ones. But I just wanted to go for something different because, like I said, Son of the Black Sword is like a wholly constructed world. It is serious. Like
Yeah.
the themes were serious.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's been actually really fun to step back and be like, this is fantasy, but this is more just like adventure fantasy, not like I got to talk about genocide and caste systems, and
Right.
totally different.
I'm going to be very curious when you end this book, because you're roughly halfway, I think.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, right
Ish.
around-ish.
Yeah, ish, yeah.
I'm very curious, though. First books are easy, none of this is easy, but they're easier to discover, right? Especially if it's like a brand new world, because it doesn't like you're not constrained by anything that came earlier.
Right, yeah.
When you get to book 2 in this, I strongly suspect you'll go back to outlining for it.
Very possibly.
I think so, and it'll make a lot of sense too, just because you're like, okay, you're like, oh, okay, well, I've got to handle this, I've got to handle that, I've got to do this and this and this, and going through and doing all the various aspects of it and saying, okay, but now that I've built up this part of the Wizard Society, I need to make sure that it ends up in this aspect of the Wizard Society, and you'll probably start taking notes and stuff.
Right.
I suspect you will.
Yeah, I've been taking notes because there's a lot of things where if you have a city of millions of people and you have somebody arrive in it, they don't see the whole city.
No.
They don't see every culture.
No.
You can see it passing by. It's like if you
it's not like we live, Salt Lake, right? You don't see all of Salt Lake the one time you drive through it.
No.
It takes a minute.
Yeah. Well, and it's like you went to LA once and you went into the airport.
Yeah.
And then you got your rental car and went to Disneyland.
Yeah, you haven't seen LA.
Haven't seen LA.
No.
There's 10 million people there and there's a lot of other stuff going on. It's a very wildly different place. I know me and you have both been there a lot. It's a very wildly different place. Yeah. It's the same kind of thing. So, I say biggest thing that I've missed from outlining, which I normally would have this all totally pinned down, antagonist motivations.
Sure.
So we've talked about this on the show when we wrote about writing bad guys.
Yeah.
I love bad guys. And normally when I would start an outline, I would always have protagonists and what they're going for, basically all the heroes and like what their arc is. I would have the antagonist and what's the antagonist's goals and what's the antagonist's plan. Mm-hmm. I would always have that at the beginning. I didn't have that this time.
Well, and honestly, if you think about progression fantasy, I mean, it seems like there'd almost be more of a hierarchy of antagonists. Like, okay, who's the mini boss?
Exactly.
So
if I'm writing a story,
does his motivation matter as much?
If I'm writing basically like this is like rank 1 to rank 2 to rank 3, like in this story basically, or it's like this guy's going from white belt to yellow belt in karate, okay? You see what I'm saying? It's you're not gonna fight the Dark Overlord.
No.
You know what I mean?
No. He doesn't have time for you.
Yeah. Now
you can make an appointment to get killed by him.
Now, sometimes you can. Like Monster Hunter International, we went from white belt to nuking an elder god, right? So you can be done, but I'm not doing that in this one. You know what I'm saying? So as it's gone, I've actually developed bigger bads, but they're in the distance. That's way out of reach,
right?
Of what anybody's going to do in their rookie season. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Which once again, this is a big difference from I spent the last 10 years writing Ashok Vidal,
right?
Who we opened, and this guy is like MVP,
right?
Of the World Face Murderer League. So very
it's a league I'd watch.
Yeah. So this is like,
I'd subscribe to the, Murder Face League.
He would be MVP though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd subscribe to that network.
So big difference on that. But so it looks like normally I'd have antagonists more nailed down when I started than I did this. So there's another thing I'm going to have to go back and tweak some stuff to make things make more sense later on. Yeah. So I say editing is going to take longer at the end, but honestly, I've been going so much faster than I normally would that I don't
End of the day, it might be 6s.
Honestly, I think it's going to wash.
Yeah.
Time-wise, for productivity. So that's kind of a cool experiment, So I would throw out to our listeners, if you think you're one or the other, I mean, give it a shot and see what works for you. Because I'm definitely an outliner to my soul, but it's been a really fun process to do it this way and to see it through and to kind of analyze it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, that's one thing that's made me a better writer. Has been trying to articulate to other people what it is I do without, because normally like I'll write and I'll just write my books and I won't think about it. I won't think about what I do. But when I have to like explain it on a panel, or I have to explain it on WriterDojo, or somebody asks me like, hey, why did you do this? I have to stop and think about why I did it. And it's actually enabled me to kind of capture why I did it and use it as a tool.
Yeah.
As opposed to just instinct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like any day job, right?
Yeah.
Like,
you don't really understand a process unless you can explain it to somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, and remember when we had Les on the show and he was talking, because I asked him about that as it relates to science fiction. Big brain concepts and stuff.
And he
right?
deals with rocket scientists.
Yeah, he does stuff that's way smarter than us.
Way smarter.
Or like when you and I worked together for DOD, right? And our boss would say, hey, for this internal company presentation, we want you to describe how pricing works and how indirect rates work. Now, most of you don't understand what I just said, but when you have to prepare that slide or that deck of slides to people in the company who are marketing people, who don't understand how any of that works, all money is just imaginary and play money for them, like most people, think the U.S. budget is, then, when you have to explain how it all works, you have to internalize it.
Yeah.
And it's the same sort of thing.
One of the best experiences I had at the beginning of my career is I only had one book out, but I set myself on book tour with John Brown. Mm-hmm. And because John Brown had one book out, we both had books out. Our first books came out about the same time. And we decided we scheduled some book signings like within driving distance, got in my Ford Focus and drove to Denver, Colorado and back, right? And did a bunch of book signings over there and got stuck in a blizzard in Wyoming.
Yep.
So during this, though, John Brown is the kind of guy who is extremely inquisitive and is always asking questions. And he's always about codifying like his systems and how he works and how he writes. And that's how John works. And so he was just asking me all these questions. He's like, hey, so why did you do this? Why do you do this? Why do you do this? And, what do you think about this? And like, what do you do here? And I was like, it actually forced me to stop and examine when I never had before. So I owe it to John, the first person to ever put me in that place at the beginning of my career to actually examine why I did what I did and see was that smart?
Well, I mean, the same thing happened to me. Because I end up writing supernaturally type stuff, I end up in all of these panels talking about horror, right? Mm-hmm. And inevitably you get asked the question, well, what are the elements of horror? How do you break down horror? And
which you codified into kind of your formula.
And to not look like a complete idiot on these panels, I had to actually stop and think about it.
Yeah.
And not all it's not like I invented any of that stuff, I invented my way of thinking about it for me. But I talked to other horror authors that I knew and I'm like, well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And I took the stuff that made sense to me and I rejected the stuff that didn't make sense to me. But I mean, shoot, we just did 2 whole episodes on talking about horror movies, why they work, why they don't work, the elements of them, how you can implement it into writing. I don't think either of us could have really talked about that
until you analyze it. That's why I think this is like don't get stagnant. We've said this on the show a lot of times, and this is like one of the things we talk about, the shooting episodes, right?
Yeah.
Or the sports episodes.
Oh yeah.
It's
sports is just progression fantasy.
Don't get in a rut. Don't always do things the same thing and not question it. I think the key to success as a writer, is experimentation and learning. And sometimes your experiment might totally fail. That's fine. I mean, if I was writing this book and discovery writing and it sucked and I hated it and I wasn't having fun, I'd stop and write an outline. Mm-hmm. I'd stop for a week and go plan an outline.
Yeah.
The thing is, I've been having fun though, and I'm enthusiastic, so it's working. But I think it's a key. not just writing, but in life. Mix it up. Don't be stagnant. Analyze what you do and why you do it. Understand. I think there's so many people in their careers who they just push a button or push a paper, and they don't understand what they do or why they do it. I run into this all the time when I'm talking to people, and they just have no passion for it.
Right.
You know, and it's like I can't imagine being a writer like that. And the thing is, I know guys like that. I know guys that's how they write, and I just couldn't do it. And so I think I've been having fun because I do things different every time. Like this last year was hard writing 2 back-to-back books, even though it was one big book that got cut in half. But for me, doing 2 books in the same series back-to-back is hard.
Yeah.
I want to mix it up. I want to change stuff. I want to do a different genre. I want to do a different thing. That's why people drive me nuts. Fans don't get it. No offense, guys, if you're a fan listening. But I get all the time from fans. Well, it's too bad you wrote such and such. I want the next whatever. You know, it's like, oh, well, that's great. I'm glad you like it, and I appreciate that. But I'm not a faucet. I'm not a soda machine that you could walk up to the soda machine
And just push a button.
And get that flavor.
Well, and what a lot of people don't realize is that when you do say, well, let's use MHI, right? When you write the next MHI book, it'll be better for having taken some time away from it to write other things.
People always think that you can just like pick what you're passionate about at any given time. But the reason MHI is still good is because by the time I've written a couple other books and I go back and I write MHI again,
the passion's there again.
Yeah. You know, I'm not doing the same. I'm not punching a clock. No. Now, if I wanted to just make money, like dead ass serious here, guys, if I want to make maximum money, I would churn out 2 Monster Hunter solo novel. I do 2 solo novel Monster Hunters a year and 1 collab
Of Monster Hunter
with somebody else. And that's what I would do. I would just do that, period, only that. And that would by far make more money than all this other stuff.
But then
it would start to suck.
I mean, look,
I guarantee it.
I mean, I've read a lot of the the crime thriller guys.
Yeah.
You know, the Connollys,
who write 26 books about the same thing in a row.
And there comes a point where the book is just the same book.
You can see it.
Yeah, you watch it happening.
A lot of these guys, and I'm not going to name any names because I like a lot of these same authors that you do, and they're good dudes.
And look, and everyone knows I love Michael Connolly's stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but there came a point in the Harry Bosch series where I'm just like, okay, this is just the same thing.
Yeah, so these guys a lot of times they've written 90 books, they've written 100 books, they've written 200 books, whatever it is. Well, they wrote 100 books, but they wrote the same book 70 times out of that, because you gotta give yourself a chance to come up with new stuff and new directions and new ideas. People also talk about Monster Hunter is so Monster Hunter is like 8-book mainline series, but you notice that every one of those is very different.
Yeah.
Like half of them are written in the third person about other characters, you know, and the first person ones are all about entirely different topics.
Yes.
You know, why? It is because I gotta make it different. If I'm doing the same thing every time, it's gonna start to suck. So it's like, for me going off and doing this is entirely different. This is a young genre. It's new. It's got its own things. It's got its own tropes. It's got its own ideas. It's not something I've played in before. I am a huge gamer nerd though. Well, yeah. So for me, this is my chance to, and we talk about watching Blood Vessel and it's just us and our friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sad. It's I get to take that
and
throw it in here.
And not just that, dude, but because you're doing it in a writing method that you don't normally do, it is also perhaps preventing you from relying on like the status quo, the same old, like picking up a crutch and using it.
Yeah, and it'd be really, really easy, especially in like worlds that I've revisited a bunch of times, to do that.
Yes.
You know, where I've gone to this well before, and I've done this, I can do it again in a different book. And in fact, I found myself doing that. I have found myself using similar plot points from book to book. And every time I catch myself doing that, I'm like, no.
Oh, yep. No, I've done the exact same thing. I did the same thing when I was finishing up the Residue series. I got to the third book and I'm like, okay, it'd be really easy to just, especially because I was writing it so fast. I was like, oh, it'd be really easy. This would get me through this point here to just do the same thing that I did in, in book one. I'm like, no. I'm going to make it so that I'm going to do the literal opposite. I'm going to make it so even if he wanted to, Jack can't do that.
Yeah.
And it makes it better.
There were a couple things. I did this now. I did do one on purpose, though. I took events from the very first Son of the Black Sword and the very end, and I took the exact same bits.
Yeah, that's circular writing, though. Yeah. So
that wasn't like going back to the same well. And in fact, the circumstances were entirely different.
Yeah.
And wound up using the exact same lines of dialogue.
Yeah. No, that's different. That's to bring things full circle with closure.
I'm waiting to see when people catch that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's only been out. That's only been out for a couple days. So
yeah, I mean, Steven Erikson talks about doing that all the time.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
So, but overall, I've been having a good time. It's been fun. It's been a learning experience, and that's to me the most important thing.
Yeah.
And also too, like I was talking about articulating what I do, and like doing this on here on the show. It's not. I can relate a little better to guys who are discovery writers and understand their process better.
Yeah.
So I guess after this, maybe I'll write some songs or poetry or something.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Yes. All right. That's all the time we have for you today. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. I always find it fun to talk to guys about this because there's this weird thing, right? Where like pure discovery writer, quote unquote, pure discovery writers, for some reason, a lot of them look down on outliners. And there's a segment of outliners that look down upon discovery writers.
So pointless.
It's so dumb. And it's like, look, that's like being upset that one person has a screwdriver and another person has a hammer. Like, they're just tools.
The book is either good or it's not.
That's right.
It doesn't matter how you got there, as long as the book is good.
Yep. So, hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. This is the Writer Dojo. We'll see you on the next one.
WriterDojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correia. Produced by Jack Wilder and Bear and Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nybo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving a 5-star rating and review, and by helping to spread the word. To advertise on the Writer Dojo, email ads@writerdojo.com. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
And life sucked and we were miserable, but it was fun.